Welcome to episode 12 of From A to Global Z. I'm your host, Dr. Bill Lord. Episode 11 provided recommendations for our music educators on how to host music lessons for their students using virtual technologies. And for this episode, I want to discuss another timely subject, how to stay socially connected through webcams. And actually, it's more of a reflection as to when you might not want to communicate with webcams. You would think that communicating with webcams is a no-brainer, but it's not that simple. We're going to explore some of the scholarly research behind this topic and give you some important information to think about regarding how, when, or if you should use webcams to stay connected. This information can be applied towards staying connected with friends and family, but even more so, it will be useful with staying connected with business associates and students. Before we jump in, it's mic talk time. For those of you who checked out episode 11, I featured a fine USB mic, the CAD GXL2600 USB large condenser mic. Now, USB mics are great as they don't cost all that much by comparison to many XLR studio mics, and they don't require an audio interface or phantom power. If you don't know about audio interfaces and phantom power, there's nothing to really be that much concerned about at this point. The important takeaway is USB mics are capable of providing very good quality audio without breaking the bank, and they are plug and play. This episode's mic talk continues along the USB theme, featuring the discontinued Audio-Technica AT2020 USB, which has been replaced by the AT2020 Plus USB mic. The 2020 is well constructed and it's very popular. It's a cardioid pattern mic and it's also available in XLR format. It's one of those best bang for your buck mics, and it's capable of producing fine audio at a good price. It performs well in the studio, in the field. It's popular for podcasting and also for voiceover work. It's a simple mic with no doodads, and it's just a really fine sounding mic. Its updated cousin, the 2020 Plus, builds on this simple foundation by adding a headphone jack and volume control and a mix control dial that blends microphone and pre-recorded audio, and street price is about 150 USD. They also include a tiny OK desk tripod, a USB cable, and soft protective pouch. If you have it in your budget to consider this mic, I highly encourage you to add it to your list of candidates. Now on with our show. At the time of this video, the world is coping with COVID-19 and many related unknowns. As more and more of us are teleworking, communicating, and socializing virtually, there can be a tendency to feel as though we've become socially disconnected from each other. A pandemic like this can be a real problem psychologically, emotionally, and even impact productivity as human beings crave a sense of stability, wish to feel connected, have a sense of belonging, and like to be seen and heard. Being removed from face-to-face interaction then presents some unique challenges. Often webcam technologies may be utilized to address these concerns. However, using webcams to achieve a sense of connectedness to others is a more complex issue than you may realize. Fortunately, there has been a fair volume of research devoted to the matter, especially as it pertains to distance learning. Since this is a field I'm familiar with and have researched, I'm going to focus this episode on this very topic and present some ways you can hopefully maintain a sense of presence and connectedness to friends, students, family, and peers by strategically using the common webcam. First of all, it's important to recognize that not everyone communicates or prefers to communicate the same way. In fact, each of us has a personal preference for internet-based communication technologies that we prefer to use. History, cultural influences, level of comfort with technology, and availability of technologies also have an influence on this matter. For instance, if you're not a native English-speaking person but live in the US and speak with a heavy accent, you may prefer to see a person's face to get visual cues that indicate if a person understands or doesn't understand the point you're trying to make. Or you may be a bit uncomfortable communicating via webcam because you don't like the way you come across visually on camera. Maybe you're having a bad hair day. This can actually cause a lot of stress for some people. I'd like to tell you a true story. I worked for a place years ago, and we were told to use computer-mediated communications more frequently as a way to reduce travel costs for holding meetings. And I had a manager who had not spent much time using a webcam prior to this point. And during one of our first Skype sessions, the camera was angled such that it did not show her face at all. However, it did give all the other meeting attendees a great view of the top of her head. Eventually, I asked as kindly as I could if she would mind tilting the camera down a bit. She was so embarrassed she refused to use webcams from that day forward. There are other influences on how people communicate. Surprisingly, as part of my dissertation research, I learned religion and gender can play a significant role. With some religions, having a man communicate with a woman over webcam can be perceived as inappropriate and pose a question of motives. Then there are also some cultures that don't believe in saying something that until they really have something worth saying. And these people may be perceived by others as being shy, but it's not the case, or it may not be the case. This is just the way that their culture communicates. Or perhaps there's a cultural respect component in play where a younger person will not speak to an older person in the room or with older people in the room unless they've been spoken to. You may also have others who prefer to communicate asynchronously or not live, as they are reflective thinkers and make their most productive contributions if they have time to think about things that have been said before responding. Oh, and don't forget to consider those with visual or hearing impairments. They may well have physical reasons for choosing to use one form of communication over another. So some people may prefer email, some webcam, some synchronous or live audio, and some discussion board style threaded discussions. And we have to factor in for cultural, gender, and religious influences. How then do we address all these needs and concerns? My suggestion is you address individual needs by providing choice and also establishing trust. Find out what each person's communication preference is, then try to accommodate their needs. And this can be tricky, and sometimes it means you'll have to shake it up a bit, using a little of this, then a little of that, to try to meet everyone in the middle. But the effort is really worth it. If you ask folks what their needs are and honor those needs as best you can, they will appreciate your making the effort to address their specific needs, and it'll be obvious you're treating everyone equally and with dignity. And frankly, sometimes, like in team meetings, you may not have options, or they may be limited, and you may require everyone to use a default technology, but we just have to do the best that we can. Next, how can we maintain social presence or the perception of communication taking place between real live human beings when we're using digital communications? Let's talk about technologies like Skype and Zoom, which deliver bidirectional live and audio-video signals, and I'm going to refer to these as webcam conferencing. Research indicates communicating via webcam conferencing enhances our ability to send and receive social cues, and it elevates a sense of social presence. Now, these cues can include the ability to see facial cues, gestures, and hear tonal inflection, which humanizes the virtual communication event. In addition, live webcam conferencing results in participants actually feeling the presence of others. In text-based communications, participants do not report experiencing that same feeling of presence. Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. Research also suggests when people assume the shape of a virtual avatar in a synchronous live computer-mediated communication session, participants feel closer to other communicants than when they communicate with just voice or text. I think that's pretty cool. So you can assume the form of something mythical or cartoonish and still achieve a level of connectedness in synchronous communication than if you had no visual representation of self at all. There's also additional research that suggests when users communicate live with audio accompanied by a still photo of themselves, no video, it increases the sense of being together and present with that person. Now, what about folks who are just not wild about using webcams? Research indicates the issue of contention might be able to be negotiated and eased into, sort of like slowly immersing oneself into the cold water in a swimming pool. So if at first a person's not comfortable being seen on webcam, maybe we allow them to use a still photo or avatar to represent the visual likeness. The hope is, over time, they may build a sense of comfort with the technology and also establish a sense of trust with those around them. And building a sense of trust is really important to the equation here. Webcam conferencing also is proven to have significant positive impact on all aspects of performance and affect. Displaying participant images via video conferencing enhances cognition and understanding in communication. The ability for learners to see each other's image over webcam and hear each other's voices lends the impression that communication is occurring in a natural way and in a natural setting. In fact, by adding humor and other personal touches, such as having visits from one's son, daughter, or a pet over webcam, further assists with humanizing the communication. I highly recommend then exploring the use of webcams during these times of face-to-face distancing as a way of maintaining our connectedness to each other. Just keep in mind the needs and preferences of those within your circles and be mindful of accommodating their needs as best you can. If we treat each other with dignity and offer up some degree of choice, it will be appreciated by those you're connected to. While there's a whole lot more I could say on the topic of webcams and computer-mediated communication, I'll close by offering up these key webcam-related tips. When using a webcam, use good front lighting and stay away from backlighting. Try not to have a cluttered background if possible. Find a room that is quiet and does not have traffic flowing through it, which is always distracting. Fill the camera with your head and shoulders only unless there's a practical need for others to see your body movement, or in the case of my videos, I leave open space where I can put text content. That's one example. And practice good netiquette. If you're not familiar with the term netiquette, just do a search and get familiar with what the term means. And there's lots of stuff out there available that will help you understand what that's all about. Done correctly, data suggests computer-mediated webcam communications can even make people feel more connected than they would in face-to-face settings. It's no joke. There's actually research supporting this statement. But remember, applying the use of webcams has to be done properly, and everyone's needs and concerns should be acknowledged and considered as much as possible. For episode 13, much as with this episode, I will refrain from predicting what I'm going to talk about. I have some really cool tech that I've been playing with my board members, and I want to continue trying out. But rather than designate a topic at this time, I'd like to give us some breathing room before committing. I'll do my best to ensure whatever the topic of discussion, it will have relevance and practical application to the news and concerns of the day. Until then, be excellent to each other. And wishing you peace through music, I'm Bill Lord.